How lucky am I? Harley Davidson Australia has sent me a brand new Street Glide ST. I took it on the condition I could say whatever I like. Am I going to love it? Been riding around for a week. It's a stock standard Harley Davidson. I don't think I've ridden a stock standard Harley Davidson for God knows how long, maybe 30 years. Because even when you test ride a bike at the dealer, they put mufflers on. Now this is absolutely stock standard. So it gives me a great chance to test this bike out as it came from the factory. It hasn't even got mufflers. Pretty quiet. You can actually hear the stereo blasting everywhere. They said I could say anything I like, so I'm going to give you a fair income rundown on this. And I'll tell you what, it's good. Hi, my name's Eamon. Welcome to the channel. If you like the channel, don't forget to check out the website and grab some supporter gear, a sticker, beanie, t-shirt, cap, whatever. So the Street Glide ST is a little bit different to the Street Glide Special that I own. Right, so we've got bronze wheels and bronze engine trim. Those bronze wheels look sensational. And you can see there's some nice engine trim there. And it doesn't have stretched saddlebags. I've gone back to the old style saddlebags, which I believe looks better. I would have preferred these when I purchased my Street Glide Special. There's nothing wrong with the look of my bike, but I just like these better. It gives you the option to run different types of exhaust systems. With the stretched bags, you can't really run a 2-into-1. With this you can, so that's my preference, and I think it makes for a sportier look. Now the Street Glide ST also only has a solo seat, and it's got no rear passenger pegs. Perfect for solo riders. If you're going to do two-up riding, you're going to have to purchase a seat that accommodates two people, and you're going to have to put the passenger foot pegs back on. The ST's also got smaller and sleeker crash bars than the Special. Now, of course, it's got a 117 instead of a 114, and that, I'm telling you, is a bonus. We've also got a stock standard high flow air intake, which I think looks really good. The problem with this is being tall sort of interferes with where I would put my knees. However, if this was my bike, I would probably get a seat that pushed me back a little bit, and then it might not make that much of a difference. So that's really only applicable for taller riders. It sort of gets in the way, but the point is you don't have to spend any money, it's already done. And of course, suspension. Check out my video where I put a friend's ST suspension on the back of my Street Glide Special. How good is that suspension now? You get an extra inch of travel. It does make a difference, that extra inch. This bike says Harley, and I don't mean written on the tank. I mean the look of this says Harley Davidson. Now I've got to tell you what's interesting. I'm riding around on this absolutely stock standard Street Glide ST, and it's a lot of fun. If it was my bike, I'm going to make this noisy and faster, but it still goes really well. You've got to give it a little bit more stick to get it moving, but tell you what though, gone are the days when a Harley doesn't hike it. These newer bikes absolutely hammer even stock standard. Unless you're coming off the latest race bike, you're not going to be complaining about the speed of these. Nobody leaves them standard anyway. I'll tell you what, the 117 really goes. You can feel the torque in this. It really does pull. In my opinion, you used to have to spend, a good 5-10 grand to get your Harley hoofing along. These are completely different. The later model Harleys, especially this 117, completely different. This goes fine, stock standard out of the box. A lot of riders are going to be very, very happy leaving this exactly as it is. It's got a very quiet exhaust note. It's still got a lumpy idle, so you're going to be happy with that. It feels like a Harley Davidson. It doesn't take much to make an M8 engine sound good. Most people are going to be happy with this bike as it is. It's a great bike. Harley Davidson's gone back to a cable clutch on this bike. Mine, a 2020 Street Glide Special, has a hydraulic clutch, which is fine. It works really well. It's very easy to use, but the friction zone is a lot smaller than on a cable clutch. Riding this around, I tell you what, I can maneuver it even easier than my bike when I'm going slow, and my bike is pretty easy to maneuver. And that's the other thing about a street glide. A lot of people are intimidated by these big bikes, but that's usually while you're riding slow, and it's all in your technique. When you're riding slow, you don't want to be using the front brake, because if you do, that's especially when the handlebars are turned, because that's going to pull the bike down and you're going to feel the weight of this bike. The idea is to use clutch control and the rear brake, and you're not going to have any problems. Of course, that takes practice. In fact, it's a very nimble bike. You can see that from those United States rodeo type events where it's usually policemen who are riding around, through those cones. I'll put a video up somewhere. You can see that they're very easily maneuverable. Now the reason, probably because the rake on this bike is only 26 degrees. Now, for those of you who don't know what rake is, that is a measurement.
Vertical line through the front axle right here. And then there's going to be another line, an imaginary line that goes through the neck. And they intersect down there at the bottom, and up here we're left with our rake number.
As you can imagine, the further out your forks get, the greater that rake is, and the more stable your bike becomes, but it's harder to turn. So a sports bike that is very maneuverable has a very steep rake, and you can imagine how unstable but easy to turn your bike would be as the forks get closer and closer to vertical. Now a sports bike often has a rake of 24 or 25 degrees. Yes, I know there are bikes around with much steeper rakes, but your average sports bike is 24, 25 degrees. Your average cruiser is 30 degrees. Now this is a 26 degree rake and it's pretty easy to turn. So with a street glide, you get a lot of advantages of a touring bike, yet it's a cut down, sleeker looking version, and it doesn't look as full on tourer like say an Ultra with the big top box. Looks a lot sleeker. Now one of the best things about a street glide is the fairing. So when you're riding down the road, your hands are actually behind the fairing and pretty well protected from the wind. You can ride this really hard all day long because the fairing, and it's the wind and you trying to hang on in that wind when you're riding really hard, that makes motorcycle tiring. So with this fairing, it takes most of the wind off your chest. You do get some buffeting, but I love that because in summer in particular, it cools you down and it still allows you to feel like you're on a motorcycle. Now this is a quiet Harley. So one of the other fantastic things about a street glide is you can actually reach the dash and see all of the instruments, no problem at all. It's one of the reasons, besides looks, that I like it over the road glide. On the road glide, you've got to really reach forward, and I think the view that I'm getting all day is a lot more pleasant on a street glide. They're essentially the same bikes except the way the fairing works. Right, so the dash is very, very easy to reach. I am probably leaning forward about 1 centimetre. One of the things I love about Harleys are where they put the indicators and that there's one for each side. Sounds silly, but it's actually really convenient compared to those bikes that have indicators on the same side. They're self-cancelling, and of course there are a whole range of other things that are handy. Now the GPS system actually connects to the Harley Davidson app that you can put on your phone. So you can put your rides in. Those of you who like to use Google Maps instead, my phone actually fits into this compartment. It does stick out, and that's my major gripe, or it's not a major gripe, that's my only gripe with the street glide, but my phone does fit in there. It sticks out, you can connect it, and you can connect Google Maps straight into this system. Got traction control, so you can stop yourself doing burnout. The bike also has cruise control. What's interesting is the traction control works around corners, so there must be some sort of a sensor that detects your lean angle. and the traction control adjusts itself appropriately, which is interesting and I reckon pretty good. You've got a drag, torque, slip control system, which I would call a slipper clutch. Technically it's a bit different. So what that means is you can change down aggressively and your back tyre won't lock up. It's a pretty handy feature. Now you got hill assist. I thought this was a bit, I don't know, and I don't use it that often, but it is actually handy because all you got to do is squeeze your brakes hard and the bike won't roll back. If you leave this bike standard, it's pretty quiet. The stereo works really well. So there's no problem at all if you want to hear a tune. I personally never ever use the stereo on my bike. Probably couldn't hear it because my bike's a lot louder. You're going to touch your phone if you want to Bluetooth it to your helmet. And then you've got a few other goodies here. There's a lot of information to be gleaned. There's trip meters. There's an oil sensor, distance to last service, and my favorite, which is tire pressure. I know it sounds crazy, but I actually love this because I don't need to check my tires. It tells me when they're overinflated or when they're running low. The brakes are good on this. Plenty of stopping power because it is a big, heavy bike. You've got ABS brakes. It's the same system that I've got on my bike. I've used it probably 3 or 4 times and I reckon it's saved my life. Well, it's certainly saved the bike's life. Okay, now the interesting thing about the ABS, like with the traction control, it works around corners so it adjusts itself appropriately when lean angle is detected. The mirrors are really easy to use, and looking at the bike from the front, the mirrors are hidden from the front, so they look great, I reckon. So it makes the bike look a lot more streamlined. A lot of people don't like these big heavy bikes because they think it's going to be difficult for doing things like getting it off the stand, because they're doing this. They're going to try and lift it, and it is a heavy bike. I mean, I'm a big, strong lad. I can lift it. No, even I couldn't lift this off the ground. And if you do it that way, it is an effort. All you've got to do is turn the handlebars to the right. And what's going to happen is when you lift this bike off its stand, it's really easy because the weight is not towards the left, which is the direction the bike is leaning. The weight is sort of pushed to the right. So it's very easy to get that off the stand. It takes no effort at all and you can straighten up the handlebars. So like with a lot of things, we don't try and muscle them. We've got to use proper techniques.